Hello, my bookish friends. Welcome or welcome back. I'm Elizabeth. This is Reading Wryly, and today we're going to talk about the 10 books that I read in January. I'm a little behind on updating y'all for my wrap up this month. I apologize, but I figured better late than never. Before we get into the books, if you are planning on participating in this month's Midnight Society book club, we are reading Plastic Monsters by Daniel J. Volpe for February. This is a novella. It's very short. There is no audiobook for this. I apologize. But you can find it on Amazon for $11.99 for the paperback, or it is also on ebook. What is that called? Kindle? Yeah, Kindle. The last I heard it was on sale for $3.99. I don't know if that's still the case, but if it is, snatch it up if you read ebooks. Otherwise, this is going to be a physical read. I'm going to be reading it physically as well. But it's less than 200 pages, 175 pages, so should be pretty quick, and that is about a woman who's obsessed with beauty, so obsessed that she meets up with a plastic surgeon and they create a plastic monster at any cost. The live show will be on my channel February 26th at 2 p.m. and I will be joined by Beth from Beth's All Booked. So there's still time. Pick it up if you're interested. Anyway, let's talk about the books that I read in January. I read 10 books and I had a really good month. The breakdown is as follows. The lowest is 3 stars. I had 3 books in the 3-star range. I had 4 books in the 4-star range. And then I had another 3 books in the 5-star range. And a couple of those, I'm like, is it 4.5? Is it 5? I don't know. We're counting it as 5 today. So let's just go with that. And as usual, I'm going to start with the lowest rated book of the month and then work my way up to those 5-star books, so hang in there. I'm also going to put my social media over here for you if you're interested. Come hang out with me on other platforms. My lowest rated book this month is Linwood Barclay's Trust Your Eyes. I don't think this is a terrible book. I think it's actually really well written and the twists were well done, but this just is not, I don't think it's going to be an author for me. His writing style felt like a man was writing it, and I've been thinking about this since I read this because I hate to disparage him for being a man. I just don't think that I'm his target audience, and there's plenty of male authors that I really enjoy whose writing doesn't scream man to me, but this one did. So that was the most part why I didn't like this. Also, this genre felt more like political thriller. It was very action-y. There, of course, I guess I should tell you what it's about. We're following Thomas Kilbride. He's a map-obsessed schizophrenic. He's obsessed with, what do they call it? Whirl 360. Oh my God. I obviously listened to this because I'm just now realizing this computer program that he's obsessed with is called Whirl 360, as in WHIRL 360, not World 360, which I've been calling it, and I called it in the vlog. Whoops. Anyway, it's basically Google Maps. He's obsessed with it. He thinks that he's part of this conspiracy where he works for the FBI or the CIA. They are asking him to memorize all of the maps in the world because there's going to be this virus that comes in and takes out the internet. And upon that happening, they will call on him because he will be the only one who knows every single road and junction and byway and everywhere and the shortest way to get to any destination. So he thinks that he's getting calls from former President Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton is his liaison. It's an interesting setup. I was a little bit nervous about the schizophrenia, how that was going to play out. Not being someone with schizophrenia, I don't think it's problematic. His character in general is really lovable. And then we have this whole thing with his brother going on. Their father has recently passed away in an accident on their lawnmower, and his older brother is questioning whether this was an accident at all. And that storyline, the kind of family storyline, I guess it would have been a more domestic storyline, had my attention more. Overall, I thought this was a good book, and I definitely would recommend it for somebody who is looking for those really well-written twists, because I have to give him credit where credit is due, and I appreciated that. But for me, it just wasn't my taste exactly, but that said, a good book. The next 3-star book that I have is All the Dark Places by Terry Parlato. This is a pretty recently released domestic thriller. We're following Molly and Jay. They are a married couple. They've been married for 3 years. They are very happy. Jay is a psychologist. He is currently writing a book about sociopathy. This was the thing that really drew me into this. I was like, ooh, we're following a psychologist. He's writing about sociopathy. Like, sign me up. When the book opens, we are at Jay's birthday party and they're at their home with several friends. The drinks are flowing, they're eating, they're having fun. The next morning, Molly wakes up and Jay is dead. His throat has been sliced open and we're trying to figure out who killed Jay. Also, Molly has like this kind of secret past that's going on that she's hidden from everybody, even her friends, and she's afraid that this investigation of Jay's death is going to bring that out into the open again. We're also following a detective. Her name is Rita, and she's kind of this tenured, like, oh, on the brink of retirement, down to earth. I really liked her character. She felt the most fleshed out. I liked her character arc more than the main characters in this story. As they investigate into Jay's death, we start to think that maybe Jay had some secrets in his past that we didn't know about. I thought this thriller was just fine. The parts that I was most interested in about the psychology and the book about sociopathy ended up being more or less filler. It did contribute to the plot, but not in a way that I wanted it to. I did not guess the twist, but it also felt like it kind of came out of nowhere, like it was one of those that just wasn't supported by the rest of the book, and it felt less satisfying for me because of that. There was one reveal though after the twist that I did really enjoy, and I do think some people are going to like this, but it wasn't great for me. It wasn't terrible, it wasn't great, it was just fun. Okay, my last 3-star book is Off the Deep End by Lucinda Berry. Kind of disappointed by this one, though it's Lucinda Berry, so, you know, it's still good. The writing is there. I had a few issues with this one that I was a little disappointed by. I will say, this kind of reminds me of her other one that I read. I'll pop it up here. In the sense that both of them had this kind of twist that wasn't really a twist, and ended up feeling a little bit lackluster, like it was building to something it could have been what I wanted it to be, but it didn't quite go there. So we're following Amber and Mark Greer. Their son is Isaac, and then we're following Jules and Shane Hart, and their son was Gabe. At the very beginning of this, Jules is driving both of the sons, Isaac and Gabe, who are very different, home from school, and they end up driving off of a cliff, and she can only save one, and so she ends up saving Isaac, who is not her son, but her son's friend, if they're even friends. Now, initially, when I read this setup, I was thinking, okay, this is giving me the good son vibes. Why did she save the other son? And I thought it was purposeful, it was intentional, but it's not. It's not intentional. She accidentally saves Isaac, which totally changes this entire book and what I thought I was getting into. Not that it matters what I thought I was getting into. I try to be very fair. She goes back to save her son and doesn't. And so her marriage kind of breaks up based on the loss of their son. They just can't make it. And so they separate. And Jules forms this like trauma bond with Isaac. They're the only two. They both have survivor's guilt. They're the only two that know what the other experienced. And so they start getting close. And Isaac's parents are not okay with this, the Greers. They think they're uncomfortable. They think Jules is reaching. She's inappropriate. They file a restraining order on her. Jules ends up having this like mental breakdown. She ends up in a mental hospital. And now afterwards, what happens is someone is going around snatching up boys. Someone's going around and snatching those boys up. Isaac disappears. So there's this whole investigation. Like, is Jules connected to this? The Greers are convinced that Jules has something to do with Isaac's disappearance because they had this weird relationship going on, but she's in the mental hospital. She really doesn't really have a free reign to go out and be kidnapping kids, but they think that she's involved. And so we're following Jules as she's being interviewed by a therapist who is hired by the police department, who is part of the investigation, who's trying to see if she knows anything. So we're following her. And then we're also following the other mom, Amber, as she tries to figure out what the hell is going on. The suspense of this revolves around what happened to Isaac and who's involved. Okay, the twist of this Like, it didn't really feel like a twist. It felt, again, like it was kind of out of nowhere, which I don't expect from Lucinda Berry. It had the potential to be dark, like Saving Noah. It had the potential to go there, but I felt like it just did not cling onto that. It lacked a little bit of focus, and it was trying to do all these different things at once, which made all of them feel lackluster to me. The themes were dark. There were very dark themes in here, for sure. But that descriptive, dark quality that I come to expect from Lucinda Berry was just not there, unfortunately. However, I will say the pacing was excellent. This read really quickly, especially with the dual perspective going back and forth, and you want to know what's happening. And so the pacing was excellent. I don't want to say too much about like what direction this goes in, but I wish I had more backstory on where the reveal goes. I can handle it going there, but I need more. And if you've read this already, then you'll probably know what I'm talking about, but I need more to explain why this went to where it went. Not Lucinda Berry's best. Of course, I'm still a huge fan, and I have a place in my heart for her always because I love her writing, but I was not in love with this one like I wanted to be. Next, I read The Test by Sylvain Neuvel. This is a kind of dystopian future, sci-fi-esque, Black Mirror-esque novella. We're following Adir, and he's taking the British citizenship test. And it's 25 questions, multiple choice. This is the only thing that's standing between him and his family and a safe, secure, happy life. And so he really, really is invested in passing this test. Well, he gets there, and before he even gets 5 questions in, he hears a gun go off. Chaos ensues. But there is an element to this that I'm not going to tell you about, and this is the kind of Black Mirror element that is really interesting and really well done. This one I'm giving 4 stars, by the way. Did I say that? This is a 4-star. Adir is given different multiple choice questions than he had expected, which requires him to choose between life and death for other people. There is a lot of discussion in here about game theory, which is basically it's not a win-win, it's not a lose-lose. If one person wins, the other person must lose, and that is how it must be. There is no in-between. When presented with this, how do people react? It's a lot of psychological stuff that goes into what makes a person who they are. There's also a lot of discussion in here about migrancy and xenophobia. The world building was spectacular. I wish it was a little bit longer. I honestly do. I wish we would have gotten to know some of these side characters a little bit better without it being like too dragged out, but nonetheless, really enjoyed my experience and my time with this one. And I'm really impressed with how much was packed into this little 108-page story. Definitely recommend this one. My next 4-star book is Next of Kin by Kia Abdullah. This one is also a thriller. It's more of like a legal thriller, but actually kind of in between because there's 3 parts to the story. The first part is kind of the setup, and then it's the legal part, and then it's like the aftermath of that. This is following a woman, Layla Saeed, and her sister. Layla essentially raised her little sister Yasmin when their mother took her own life when they were very young. Layla was 18, Yasmin was 11, and so she's always felt very protective of Yasmin, and she's always kind of shielded her from their poverty, and she vowed to herself, I'm not going to be like this forever, I'm not going to struggle forever, I'm going to be successful, and she becomes successful. She has her own architecture firm. She's a badass bitch. She does what she said she's going to do. She's very straightforward, but she's a little bit emotionally detached. Also, her and her husband had been trying to have a baby for a very long time and could not. She's gone through all of the things and had miscarriage after miscarriage after miscarriage. So when her sister and her husband have this beautiful little baby boy, Max, it's heart-wrenching for her because she loves her sister, she loves her nephew, but she also, it hurts her heart because she wants a child of her own. That's the one thing she's always wanted. So one day, Yasmin's husband gets called into work, and he doesn't have time to take little Max to the nursery. This is also set in London, by the way. So he calls up Layla, and he's like, hey, can you come pick up Max, take him to the nursery? It's just, just a little bit past your work.
Sure. I'll come get him.
So she comes, she picks him up. As she's on the way to work, she gets a call. Oh no, something terrible has happened. She gets distracted. She drives into work and forgets that little Max is in the back seat.
Max dies.
I know. This whole story is about this situation. It does go to trial, and then there's also a kind of cop character that we're following who thinks she's very guilty. And the question is, did she do this on purpose? Did she leave him in there on purpose, or did she not? Nobody thinks that she purposefully was like,
Fuck you, baby. I'm gonna leave you in here.
but they may have thought that she was like, okay, I'm just gonna run up, fix this, and then I'll come right back down, and then totally forgot to come back down. There's this back and forth of, is she guilty? Is she innocent? We find out things about her family and their dynamics and more things about the past. Oh my gosh, this was so good. At first, for a while there, I was like, is this just gonna be like a family drama? And obviously it's devastating when you get to that part. Like, you know it's coming. It's like a car crash. Like, you don't want to watch it, but you also can't take your eyes off of it. And it's just like, ugh, it's heart-wrenching. But there were some twists in the end, like back to back to back to back. Alice Feeney style twists at the very end that I was not anticipating. Bam, bam, bam. Oh, okay. It was really good. Definitely recommend this one if you like a legal thriller. And again, this is not like the first one, the Linwood Barclay, where it's more political thriller. This isn't political. It's just like legal in the courtroom type stuff, which I prefer over the political. Very different, but also the same, but very different. My next 4-star read this month is How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. There's really not a twist in here. We know how to sell a haunted house. We know the house is haunted. Like, you know what's up. It's a horror book. It's not gonna have the twists of a thriller. That being said, there were some really creepy moments in there, and I really love how this book talks about generational trauma. We're following Louise and Mark. They are estranged brother and sister that have come back together once they learned that their parents have died in a terrible car crash, and so they have this house and they want to sell it, but it's haunted. So how do you sell a haunted house? They have to figure that out. At first they're like, no, it's not haunted. You know, they're arguing with themselves in their own minds. Like, did I really see that? Am I going to say anything? And so there's this conflict between them. And then when they start to admit to it, all hell breaks loose. And there's some really, really funny lines in there that, like, I don't want to say, because even though there's no real plot twist in there, like, that just gives you the details of it. So I don't want to do that. But Grady Hendrix is really great about delving into his characters. These characters feel real. Their motives feel real. They feel three-dimensional. He's so good about that. He also has this like witty commentary that's going on about generational trauma. This almost dry humor throughout. Like, some of these lines, it's just so stupid. It made me laugh so hard. I really enjoyed this one. I think if you like a haunted house story, this one is one that I would absolutely recommend. My last 4-star book of this month is actually the book that I picked for our first Midnight Society book club, and that is Motherthing by Ainsley Hogarth. I read this with Gabby from over at Gabby Reads, and she gave it 5 stars, which I was so excited about. Abby and Ralph. They live with Ralph's mother. When Ralph's mother takes her own life, Ralph starts to think that his mother's ghost is haunting them, and this really affects their relationship together. The way that this is written is the only complaint that I have. Like, I actually really liked the writing, but I felt like it was just a little bit too much. It was a little bit too purple at times. But if you pick out each sentence like one at a time, each one is just beautiful. Like, it's so beautiful, but it was just a little bit overwhelming. I did try to just listen to this on audio, and I ended up having to have the physical book with it too, because otherwise it was just going in and out. However, it has so much to say about grief. It has so much to say about mental illness. It has so much to say about motherhood and who deserves to be a mother, and again, generational trauma, because Abby had a really, really bad relationship with her own mother, and so she was looking for that from Ralph's mother, and Ralph's mother was a total bitch and did not accept her. She's just one of those manipulative mother-in-laws that, like, feels like it's basically like she's in a relationship with her son and she's fighting for time and attention of her son with his wife. Abby just, like, really, really wanted that affection that from a mother that she never had. There's this mystic lady that she goes to see to try to deal with her. There's like all of these little things that go on in here. Oh my gosh. And it's funny. It's really, really funny. I was laughing out loud at times. The ending is so good. The last like 50 pages of this book goes off the wall in the best way possible. And I I loved that. I loved that. Yeah, I was so nervous for going live on my channel for the book club. It was my first one. And it's not that I'm nervous going live. It's like the handling of everything and like leading the conversation and putting the comments up and all of that. And I called Gabby Abby. Granted, it was the character's name in the book, but I just felt awful about that. So I have to apologize for that, Gabby. I know it was my nerves. I'm not an intentional asshole. I'm an unintentional asshole. But I'm sure everyone was like, how could you not know Gabby's name? Dumb dick. That's totally my fault. I'm so sorry. But I do feel like I got a better handle on at least some experience doing the live. So I'm really excited for next month, for this month. Okay, moving on. Now this one, I rated it 5 stars at the time, but I think it might be a 4.5 star because it's not really staying with me. This is also the first book that I read of 2023 and the first book of the year. And in January, and that is Full Immersion by Gemma Amor. And I really liked this. First of all, she narrates the audiobook. The audiobook was fantastic. So the premise of this really does nothing for this story. And we're following Magpie, and the premise, the way it's set up, is that she comes along her own dead body, and she has to figure out why she is dead and what killed her. Meanwhile, there's this mysterious presence called Silhouette that is like following her around. She's trying to escape it. But really what this is this woman is suffering postpartum depression. This book personifies postpartum depression as a monster. And so there's a lot going on between that, and there's a lot to say about that. And it's just so well done. It's so moving and so vulnerable of her to write something like this. I was just really impressed by this. Someone compared this to SCRIBD by Ian Reid, which is why I picked it up. And I absolutely can see that comparison. If you want something that is just really weird, that doesn't always make sense, but has a lot to say and makes real life horror into something potentially supernatural, then you should try this book. She is just going through it, and so she tries these experimental treatments. She's wired up, hanging in this laboratory, and these researchers are just doing experiments on her. And so we're seeing what's going on in her head as that's happening. We also get like the perspective of what's going on outside of her body. And so the dissonance between those two experiences is what really makes the tension in this book so well done. Now that I'm thinking about it, it's like coming back to me, and I am really more like appreciating it more and more. So she has all of these notions about herself and about who she is and about her value and her worth. And as she is kind of trying to figure out why she's found herself dead, she is having to confront her past and having to confront her present and work out things that she may not have had the opportunity to do otherwise if she was not in this kind of experimental situation. And I thought it was great. It was a really, really good book. If you like something like SCRIBD, pick it up, try it out. I think you'll like it. And the audio is great. 2 more. My next 5-star. Okay, I guess this is gonna be 5 stars. Maybe a little bit of a surprise, but it is The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. I don't know why I picked this up. I think Ashley may have talked me into this from Ashley's Little Library because I know she really enjoyed it. We tend to like the same kinds of romances. Though I don't read much romance, but you know what? I was just in the mood for it. So I said, let's try it. And I did, and I loved it. I thought it was perfect. This is not smut. If that's what you want, yes, get it. Follow your joy. But if that's what you're looking for, this book is not it. I don't like smutty romance books. And it's not the smut. It's not the sex scenes. I don't mind the sex scenes. It's the word choice referring to genitalia. It's the dirty talk. Those things make me cringy, and I just don't like them. But this was perfectly done. So we're following this ghostwriter. She's writing romance novels for this woman, and nobody really knows that she's this woman's ghostwriter. But this woman is a very, very well-known romance author, and so she is kind of filling in her shoes. And while she's sacrificing what she could be building of her own notoriety, she is reassured that she can pass as this great romance writer. And so it makes her feel good about herself. But the thing is, Florence went through this really terrible breakup with this
fucking douchebag of a guy.
And now she doesn't believe in love anymore, and she's having a really hard time finishing this book, and she has a deadline. She also has a new editor who is really hot, who doesn't know that she's the ghostwriter, and to whom she can't explain why she's having so much trouble finishing this when she gets a call that her dad has just died. Then we get a glimpse at her family, and they are under undertakers. They're a family of undertakers. Her dad was an undertaker, and they own a funeral home. Is that the same thing? I don't think that's the same thing. They own a funeral home. Morticians. They're morticians. So her whole family has this like ghostly, dark kind of vibe to them. It's very Wednesday Addams. Oh yeah, and Florence can talk to the dead. And her dad could as well, but nobody really understands that part of her. Her editor shows up at her door and he is a ghost. And she's like,
what's going on? I thought you were alive. Why are you here?
They start to build this relationship and it goes from there. I don't read a lot of romance, but when I do, I want it to be like this. I love everything about it. I love the vibes. I loved the way it was written. I liked perspective of a writer in a story. I liked the ghosty stuff in the story. I thought it was so cute. It all came around full circle and the ending was perfection and I loved it. Let's move on to my last 5-star book and my favorite book of this month, and that is The Husbands by Chandler Baker. I did not see this one coming. Like, I don't know why, because it's social horror. It's social horror and I love social horror. It's essentially the Stepford Wives in reverse. And you know I like a role reversal. I just something about it does it for me. We're following Nora Spangler. She's this high-powered attorney and her husband doesn't really help her out. She's got a little toddler. She's also pregnant. She's trying to do everything by herself. Don't we always try to do everything by ourselves? Women can do anything, but they can't do everything. And this book has so much to say about that. She meets this group of high-powered women and they live in this little enclave and she wants to move in, but it seems like it's kind of hard to get in. And like everybody within this enclave is like a doctor, a lawyer, like really high up in their profession, very accomplished. So when her and her husband go to look at this house, they see as they're coming in, there's one house that just burnt to the ground. They're like, what the hell happened there? And then they meet these women and the women say, well, you know, one of our friends, her house burnt down, her husband died in it. He was in it when it went down. And she needs a lawyer. And you know, it's kind of hard to get into this community, but maybe a little quid pro quo. You help us out, we help you out, we can get you in here. And she's like, I don't know, it seems like a conflict of interest. But eventually she decides it's in her best interest to go ahead and help them. Everything unfolds from there. We have the mystery of what happened to this woman's husband. And then we have something going on with the husbands in this community because they're all very helpful. They're all very insightful and thoughtful and caring. They sit and talk together about organization, about stain removal techniques, and it's a little bit weird, but you know, Nora's like into it, but her husband, not so much. This book made me feel seen. It just made me feel like I'm not the only one who feels like I have to be on top of everything and I have to be in control of everything. And I think a lot of us feel this way, and it just made me feel like I'm not alone in that, you know? So if that's something you're interested in, 100% pick this up. The audiobook's great. The physical book's great. I already bought a copy of it for myself. It's on my shelves. It's going to be there. 5 stars. We may see this at the end of the year. I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to keep my eye on this one because it is fantastic. Those are all of the books that I read in January. So sorry that it was a little bit late this month. I appreciate you hanging out with me till the end. If you watched this video to the end, I'm just going to try this because it's a fun little experiment for me. If you watched this video all the way to the end, why don't you give me a fire emoji for this book? Let's do a little fire emoji. Just to let me know who's hanging in there. Again, I appreciate you guys so much. Hold on, I have a drink. Don't forget that life is short, so read Wryly. Cheers and goodbye.